Man, these stories keep on getting better. So, do you remember how in April, Prison Architect 2 was delayed by Paradox? Now, when they did that, they said that the team was mainly trying to solve memory-based stability problems and performance issues in the game. But, technically, it had been certified on console, so you would think, grand, it'll take no time, easy. But then a week after that, the game's development team was, no longer the game's development team. That was pretty crazy. They were called Double 11. They had been working on Prison Architect 2 for years, and they were publicly replaced by their co-developer on the project called Koku. Or maybe it's Koku, that's a little bit less lewd. Now, of course, looking at this at the time, we thought, that's really weird, this is suspicious. How will a new team be able to take over this project and deliver it by September 3rd? Because as much as they said it's performance, it's stability stuff, that doesn't really seem like the sort of thing that means an entire new team has to come in. So it turns out those fears were right. We have went from performance stability issues to an indefinite delay. So if you wanted this game on September 3rd, you are not going to get it. And that means you may as well check out Bellular.games, because over there we just published our report into Stormgate's early access, as well as in another one of our publications yesterday, how a publisher collapse is actually threatening indies, and Gary's Mod 2, which, Gary's Mod 2 is basically trying to combat Roblox, which I definitely want to see. So over in Bellular.games, the rest of my team publishes loads of content, and we're also publishing videos early there, and of course everything is ad-free. So go check out Bellular.games if you want to support us. And with that said, let's talk Prison Architect 2. This is what they said. At this stage, we can't commit to a new release date as we need to reassess the scope of the work needed to be done before the game is release ready. Over the next few months, we will focus on improving the game and building a more robust release timeline. And this really is the new Paradox special. I mean, they have done this a lot of times. And of course, it follows a good Paradox tradition, which is that all pre-orders are now being refunded. They're not going to take your money for a game that does not have a release date. Previously, they did this with Life by You and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, a game that may come out in this century. Now, their explanation for this delay, right, is that the game is built with loads of interlinking systems. So if you change one aspect, you basically have got to retest everything else. And they say that it's this that makes bug fixing, especially those performance improvements, really hard to implement fast, but they are adamant about something, and that is this game is not dead. They say, no, the game is not cancelled. And just sidebar, they'll say that because Life by You, which is really a competitor against Paralives, there's a version coming out of Korea as well, and of course, obviously The Sims, but basically they shit-canned that project. That meant that a lot of people fundamentally lost trust in Paradox, so when they saw this, they thought, the game looks to us mid, like what's this 3D thing? There's dev trouble, now it's indefinitely delayed. This is just going to be Life by You again, isn't it? Because of course, right up to the point where Life by You was killed, it was just being delayed and delayed and delayed again, just like this game has been. What they say though is, we are confident in the game, but we want to raise quality before release, mainly the performance. We will communicate a new release date as soon as we've worked out scope and of a timeline we're confident in. Now, that is fair enough, and this is absolutely the sort of thing that applies to a little game called City Skylines 2, probably one of the biggest own goals of really last year in gaming. It absolutely sucked that a team was basically forced to release a product that was not ready by their publisher. That blows. And this is very much the paradox of 2024. They're talking about quality and they're refusing to ship things that will not meet audience expectations. Obviously, City Skylines 2, perhaps Lamplighters League, and just other projects that they had. And even in their big, successful, long-running things like, Victoria and Europa Universalis, they had, they had issues. They had bad releases. There was the likes of Imperador Rome. Basically, it just could not keep on going. But going back to the statement, there is something telling. They say, quote, "We have reworked the game's scope." Now, if this game was certified as they last told us and effectively ready for release, but just needing some, architecture fixes, then why does the scope need to be reworked? Do they mean the scope of the performance issues, or are we at the point where Koku had basically too much game to fix, and now the only thing that they can do is remove things to get it to be, to get it to be shippable? But of course, when you remove something because maybe you think you can't fix it reasonably, or it's too much of a risk factor, it's not like you just remove it and then ship the rest of the game. right? And that's because the thing that you're removing is probably a baked-in assumption to all of the other parts of the game, right? So it ends up being a just massive problem. It's not like in, say, some sort of a narrative game where you could just really cut some side content and things that will easily fall out of a game. No, this is not a situation like that. And where it all gets spicy, of course, is the money. Yes, we love talking about money over here. So the write-off of Life by You meant that for this quarter, Paradox Interactive were taking a loss of 208 million Swedish krona. That's pretty bad. As of their interim results, right, for the whole quarter, they made a profit of 28.9 SEK, down from profits of 292.9 million. So, yeah, just a little cheeky order of magnitude difference there. GG, lads. That basically means that the write-off of Life by You wiped out almost 90% of the profits from that quarter. That is crazy. Now, they still made a profit despite that, which does show they have strong fundamentals, good brand, good IP, bit of a rocky reputation, obviously, but very, very, very high retention, high player time properties with deep investment. So that's why Paradox is fundamentally still a really fantastic, it's a fantastic opportunity if they can get their shit together, and that is the biggest if. So that's Paradox 2024. The question then is, where does CEO Frederick Wester say that they have been successful? Remember, he was earlier CEO, then he left, another CEO came in, that was a shit show, and basically now he is back. So this is what he said at the time. Looking at this quarter's results, we've released several strong expansions with good quality to our core games, which has had a positive impact on the top line and provides a good cash flow from operating activities. The bottom line is sadly weighed down by the write-down of Life by You. It is painful, but gives us strong motivation to further improve our operations. Yeah, I think I'd call that strong motivation if I was in his position too. Because imagine looking at your top line and seeing that Machine Age for Stellaris, Sphere of Influence for Victoria 3, and a few other releases actually did really well, and then just seeing that the profits, the gains from those hardworking teams just got deleted, probably because of a failure of project and risk management. Now, part of the reason why those things actually did quite well is that they were left to cook for long enough that audiences could actually be satisfied. I mean, just look at the Steam reviews, they are mostly in the positive range, and I think it really does suggest that, say, the delay of Sphere of Influence for the sake of quality, that actually did pay off. I mean, hell, even City Skylines is beginning to get some more positive press, and this is basically in the wake of a creator summit and a pretty chunky surprise content update, which is this. The Detailers patch basically gave you zonable roundabouts, surface tool updates, and 30 variations for buildings and vehicles, and that did engender some goodwill. I mean, it was free and bigger than the Beachfront pack, if you remember that drama, but it's obviously not a fixed game. There is a lot of, there's just a massive mountain of bad will to climb, because ultimately, even though I can sit here and say that I feel awful for those developers, that I do not think any of them wanted it to go this way, ultimately, their company, their decision makers let them down by saying, sorry, you have to now ship work that you are not satisfied with. That is brutal, and from the perspective of leadership, it cuts against a core principle. One thing that I've learned is the topic of burnout, and one of the things that causes burnout the most is whenever people do not perceive a sense of control or influence on really outcomes, right? On control. So imagine if you have a real strong, high-performing team, but you mess them around. You will burn them out, and that will damage, that will destroy your brands, and that is what Paradox risked doing. And who knows, perhaps that's actually what happened to the original development team of Prison Architect 2, and perhaps that's why it's no longer the case that they can even finish the game. The next thing then is for us to zoom out and take a look at what this year actually looks like for Paradox. So their only remaining full game release is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. It's been through multiple developers, people who were actually working on the original game as core creatives ended up leaving the project. It seemed like a massive shit show, but here's the deal. It is now being developed by the Chinese Room. Now, the Chinese Room, they did the likes of, say, your Dear Esthers and stuff. Their most recent game, Still Wakes the Deep, was honestly one of my favorite little game experiences. Now, yes, it was not a survival horror game that was going to be giving you, say, Leon Kennedy upgrades and action gameplay because you're just an electrician. But I think as a piece of art, storytelling, just voice acting. Man, I absolutely loved Still Wakes the Deep. I suppose while I'm not going to be expecting a humongously in-depth and detailed RPG that is full of systems, I do actually see a future where that developer's skills could absolutely create a world that is just seeped in the vibes. And certainly, if you want that, but it's a pack of Scottish people in the 70s, check out Still Wakes the Deep. It's on Game Pass, and I highly recommend it. If you want to know how people, I suppose, in and around our neck of the woods sound, that's it. That's how a lot actually talk. It ain't all the Queen's English. Now, that is one game, long delayed, and then there are 2 Stellaris expansions that will be closing out the season pass for the year, and then there's the next Crusader Kings DLC. Now, Paradox have also openly talked about Europa Universalis 5, but that is not coming this year. And this does leave Paradox without any heavy hitters for their core management game audience. And that's very much why they said this about their own performance, quote, "It is clear that we have made the wrong calls in several projects, especially outside our core, and this must change. We have areas where we need to improve, for example, in production, quality, and risk assessment." That is true, and it also aligns with things that I have heard personally on the grapevine. My closing message for today, I think, is a vital lesson for any decision maker. I mean, really in most industries. And it is that unless they are deliverable, unless they're actually feasible, then your plans aren't plans. They are merely ambitions. And I think whenever people are in a C-suite, they're talking to other C-suite people. So they're talking about strategy all the time. But the problem is, right, you can have a great strategy, you can have a marketing department that is able to execute on, getting your brand message out there for your various different games. You can make your trailers, you can do this, do that, have your web dev people spin up a nice forum for feedback. But guess what? You cannot outrun the fundamentals. Our industry has basically ended up doing the whole lipstick on a pig thing for a long time. The wrong things have been prioritized. The "we'll fix it later" in a patch mentality has went absolutely too far, to the point where customers feel burned. And they don't feel burned by specific devs and specific publishers. I mean, they do, but they don't only. What they actually begin to feel is burned by the industry at large. And that is why, as somebody who cares about this industry deeply, it is annoying to me when a dev fucks up. Because when they do, they make the whole thing worse for the rest of us. Because if our peers cannot be trustworthy with audiences, then audiences will rightly be suspicious of us. That is the most vital thing, and something that the C-suite class absolutely need to take on board. They just need to be humble and realize that the devil is in the detail, everything is execution, and the big lofty plans in their head do not matter if they are not deliverable. Now, I'm not saying that Frederick Wester needs to go around all of his studios and just spend a few days in each of them as a coder, but you know what? That principle of what happens if your CEO actually just logs into a customer service account and does that? What will they learn? That is, I think, something that needs to happen in this industry. That's it for me. Have a bloody brilliant day. Check out Bellular.games to help me secure a bright goddamn future. And with that said, I will see you tomorrow.